is a roll of the dice. Played 1,000 hours and I think that I died just once, or maybe twice. I live in dungeons, dungeons, always still. I live in dungeons, dungeons, like a kid. I'm well respected as a lord of the blade. Got a dozen guildmates, always up for a late night raid. Though I wouldn't know them by a name or a face. We fight like brothers in a war with the dark elf race. In a dying age, I live in dungeons, dungeons, always still. I live in dungeons, dungeons, like a kid. Dungeons,
Alrighty, there we go. That's not where we want to be, but it's a start. Welcome to Nikos. I'm Jonathan Albin, your host, and today is News Day. Happy News Day. I changed the day of the week because this is the day that we do all broadcasts about all new stuff going on, and man, do we have a lot to catch up on. We haven't done one of these in several months, and it's also the first one since we've come back on the airs, so thank you for your patience and glad to have you with us. Let's get under it, shall we? Whoops. Isn't that interesting? Alrighty, so we are going to be talking about a lot of things today, and I'm exploring the map and seeing whether or not I've got everything right here. Let's see. No. It's clearly not doing its thing, so give me a moment and I will be right back. Got to change the setting here.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame. Our strength in numbers is a roll of the dice. Played 1,000 hours and I think that I died just once. Or maybe twice. I live in dungeons.
Alright, I think that fixed it.
Dungeons. Always.
Give this a shot and see whether this works or not.
I live in.
It does. Alrighty, so welcome to Newsday. We've got a lot to cover. Let me go get rid of that other screen. I'm so professional, can't you tell? Yeah, I got this together. I will do so much better in post-production. Alrighty. So, this is the world of Nikos as it is right now, basically. And as you can see, it's fundamentally made of really two continents. The left or the west continent is Growland, and the east continent is actually a combination between two former continents. Nordlum and Jarlum are now a singular continent. And as we go forward, the map over iterations may change, but this is generally the space that we have to work with. The countries that are involved and the countries that are represented are generally the names that are in the yellow. Those are city-states for the most part. The bright blue lettering is terrain features that are particular and are usually used as general landmarks for the locale you're in. And then the different icons mean different things. And while I could reveal a bunch of things, my players may actually watch this video, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But the news today is going to be about what's going on in basically all of these locations. I'll try to go from basically the way you would read a book, where you go from the west side to the east side, moving across the continent and talking about what's going on in each region as far as the current news that's available. Now, right this current moment in the iteration, the Gnome News Network hasn't been launched again in this iteration. It has to basically be rediscovered and reinitiated in order for the news to become global. So at this point, what you're going to be getting are the general, basically, equivalent of ancestral press releases, so to speak. I will be going basically from country to country, working my way across the map and describing those areas that have been interacted with by the players. Some really big things have happened, so you'll definitely want to stick around, particularly when we get over into the area near Eldrasar and beyond. But We're going to start off over here on the west coast and make sure my pointing works right. Nope, got it wrong. Over here on this corner of the map, the country, the city-state called Mantara, or Mantara, depending on who you are and what time of year. The city-state of Mantara is near an area known as World's Edge. It's a rather extreme cliff face that, according to mythology, once connected with the area near what is now Burgle Cut on the opposite continent over there, way over there. They used to wrap around, and there was basically a land bridge that would let you literally walk around the world. Well, during the 6th iteration, a number of giants and titans basically decided to break the world, and utilizing a weapon known as World Breaker, it's said, were able to cleave the mountains and actually cause a tear in dimensional rift, and therefore you can't even, in theory, see across the Blackwater any longer to the other continent. So, now, the reason why the water is the reddish color is, if you have not heard of the world of Nikos, the system itself is a small planetoid, roughly the size of Terra's moon, maybe a little bit larger, with an iron core, and it in turn orbits a gas giant by the name of Nimbus, and it rotates so close to Nimbus as to make it impossible to see external solar light. So other solar bodies that might be out there, generally, we're not able to reach the world of Nikos. But indeed, this iteration has now been developed to the point where the solar bodies known as stars are actually, to the locals, are called asters. The asters now are able to permeate the coronosphere, if you will, of Nimbus, and provide guiding light. And the theories are that you should be able to navigate in the Blackwater. Now, for the last 5 or 6 iterations, that has not been possible, and so therefore no one has ever sailed out into the Blackwater, extending their adventures beyond the continents as we know it. But we'll have a surprise really late in the video where we're going to talk about something that's really exciting going on Saturdays. So, the kingdom of the area of Mantara near World's Edge has been fairly silent of late. They entered the iteration with a bit of a splash, as several adventuring groups did pass through the area, but their interaction has been very slight. It is known that it is a mortal kingdom with a actual king. So there is a king of Mantara. The players they're not currently aware of his name. He was only referred to as the king. So there hasn't been any interaction that way. Passing eastward, therefore, across the Sea of Sand, we come next to, and I'm going to start basically on the north side and work my way south along the map. So as we leave this area and cross, we're going to come to the city of Salafort. And Salafort is a separate kingdom. They did have until of late a King Tanderu, and the devastating news for the world is that Tanderu has been murdered, and a murder most foul, as a weapon known as a Morgal blade was used to end his life, which not only put his life at an end, but it also, according to the legend and according to the evidence, destroyed both his body and soul. So there's literally nothing left of the King Tanderu, and it is known generally that the kingdom of Tenerife, far to the south, it was known to be a kingdom of assassins that were basically for hire and worked with, yes, I'm going to say it, you're going to probably be surprised, the insurance companies. And anyone who is eliminated with a mortal blade, their insurance policies are voided because you can't bring somebody back from that. Whereas several of the insurance companies had guaranteed processes where if a portion or even your whole body were returned to Tenerife, they would bring you bodily back to life as part of your policy. And although it generally applies to the nobles and richest individuals of the southern cities, it was provided to international leaders as well. And so Tonderu was believed to have had a policy, and now unfortunately it's been voided, as has he, I suppose. The rumors fly about who may or may not have been responsible. The number one claim and the first person to actually be put on a wanted list, so to speak, for the crime is one lady, Catelyn Noir of Cryopathia. It's said that the two of them had been married at some point in the past. Tonderu being a giant red panda, and Catelyn being, and that's second genesis. So it's a anthropomorphized giant red panda, and Catelyn, a sec gen, again anthropomorphized clouded leopard. Shadow. I can't remember that. I'm going to mess up the species name. But anyway, her appearance is of a all black panther-like being with leopard spots in terms of the texture of her coat, and a reputation for having capabilities of stealth and perhaps murder. So she's being blamed. There are witnesses who claim to have seen Catelyn in Salafort shortly before the instance, and so there are quite a few questions swirling about that. There are no other suspects at this time, but of course the case is just beginning, so this will be indeed fun going forward. Now, moving therefore from Salafort southward, we will cross into the area of the Wilderlands and Candle Scratch in particular. We'll move further east to Oagath in a minute, but in the area of Nyx, the city is enjoying somewhat of a renaissance for the first time in countless iterations. The city itself was not targeted by the misfortunes of the past. Previous iterations, the city was rather unceremoniously and for all practical purposes eliminated by the arrival of the mortal craft known only as Candlefall. And in previous iterations, the mountains here had been devastated by craft entering the atmosphere and basically disintegrating on the way in, and taking out the city in the process in a rather fantastic display of pyrotechnics, shall we say. But this iteration, that did not happen, and so Nyx, a direct link to the realm known as the Feyre, is enjoying a renaissance somewhat. People are beginning city from all over and is becoming a central destination. The Eldrin people who are from the area are collectively known as Nixies, and they are not the classical definition of that, but rather smaller than average size Eldrin, with more coarse features, broader faces, long unkempt hair, and a penchant for martial engagements. So it's a fun place, and the player groups that have visited here have paid homage to the arguably one of the oldest monarchs, Oberyn. But we'll come back to that. From there, you go eastward to Elgath, and at this point, the people have passed through the city and found the new hospitable hosts to be not only helpful but an enjoyable experience, as they are embracing their Furlaurin Eldrin heritage, drawing together from the different disparate the diaspora of the Eldrin and bringing them all back to a more centralized location. Now the structures are arguably more human-like than Eldrin, as the earlier Furlaurin had embraced their human kin, blurring the lines between the two species. But as they are now kind of re-establishing themselves as the heritage of true Eldrin, Elgath is really becoming a resort space. Going south from there, you enter the area known as the Khanate of Khang, and there is nothing known about this area. Fundamentally, it's been treated kind of like a flyover state. It's said to be a totalitarian regime with a Morrowind leader who fashions himself as a avatar, if you will, of the elements, master of wind, master of water, and so on. But in this iteration, no one's bothered to spend a minute with the Khanate, as it is rather isolationist anyway, and not very unfriendly to those outside. Beyond that, you have the Kingdom of Usht, which is on the map called Usht-Ish. The area of the Ust are an aggregate of the more wild species of Nikos. There is a rather sizable Groll contingent, as well as Urglik and Trollocs. So it's a mixed bag. Rumor has it that there is a connection between Usht and one of the Ziggurats, but where there is no current direct connection made between them. Of course, the very word Ziggurat is triggering, so we may end up with several people responding to this video on the basis of that. Further south, you have the nation currently known as the Farthfell, and it is enwrapped in a basically four-sided civil war. The four leaders, known as the Counts of the region, are at war with each other, and while they do seem to be gaining support from other species and trying to extend the war to a more wider region, that has not happened yet. And several of the players are originated in the area of the Farthfell, but they have since quote, exited the premises, so we'll leave that where it is. Going a bit south, further south, you have the city of Tenerife, and it appears that the Timorg, Timorgh, the Timorg family has at least tacitly laid claim to being the family responsible for the death of Tonderu that I mentioned before. Now this is a kind of a species claim because the holdings of Timorg are so far south of the Salafort region as to really not have much to do with the kingdom, although as sellswords, Timorg does have a reputation for overextending from time to time. So that's where that is now. I do want to mention in particular the Skiffborn, which is the group that plays at Board Game Paradise on Tuesdays, is currently transiting northward out of the Farthfell region. They just recently avoided getting involved in getting dragged into the Civil War by remaining airborne in an airship, and they are currently landed, sort of stranded in the mountains of the Grithwall due to extremely bad weather, and do not want to risk crossing over the mountains in such a bad state of affairs, and so they have been engaging with the local population of Urglick and seem to have reached a state of parity with them. They are on their way to the area of the city of Nexus. We kind of bypassed it because Nexus has not yet formally been placed on the map, as no one has established contact with the train station that is being built there. So we will be updating this map as soon as that happens. Their express intent is to try to engage with a sighted ziggurat off the coast. So more details on that will be upcoming. Sweeping from there eastward across the mountains of the Grithwall, we do have to mention that a red storm has been identified, seen, and at least recorded on a map someplace, suggesting that the iterational restart has been altered now because of a time vortex. Now, these are historical artifacts and are thought to have been eliminated long ago, but one has been instituted, and you'd have to follow along with the Skiffborn adventuring group, as they are the ones who, let's just say, they logged its location and have had several engagements with the features and benefits of the chronological vortex. We'll come back to that at some point in the future. Moving past that locale, we come to, I do have to mention that also in that area, it is reported, or has been reported, that there was a considerable amount of Eldrin interaction some time ago. Something like 7 months prior to this. So, I'm not going to say any more than that, but just the realization that the Eldrin may or may not be involved in the temporal, arguably malfeasance, is a point to note. Next we get to Moria, the city also previously known as Neo Moria, and one piece of note is that there's a challenge in the city in that the lower levels of several of the stores and cellars of the community are being reported as flooded with a strange liquid that apparently is at once capricious but also lethal. This lake of silver is extending upwards from beneath the city in a sort of a wellspring. And as you can see on the map, there is now a sizable lake. Many of the buildings are still standing a la Venice, and so there is a recent start in building canal boats for plying the streets of Moriah. But needless to say, this is a major concern to the city leaders who are still serving the Pony Empress. It's more a term of endearment than an actual title any longer, as the Empress is herself a recently, is a descendant of the leaders of the city. A lot of lore there, but suffice it to say that the Empress and her retinue are operating from the area above the stables of the city at this point. Moving back north, we haven't covered much of the Midlands, and they're not even placed on the map yet, so we won't deal with that even in this video. But we're going to come back up to the city of El Sadar, and our Strangers in a Strange Land group has finally arrived in the city of El Sadar, and boy, there's a lot of activity that's been going on with that group. They meet on Monday nights at 6 p.m. So if you're interested in being a player in our group, you're more than welcome to join us. That is an open session on Mondays at the store. There is a $10 table fee, but your first session with us in Nikos is free. The Monday group is in El Sadar. The Tuesday group, as I said, is in the mountains of the Grithwall. So they are both very actively pursuing their courses. As we talk about the city of El Sadar, there is a council of the Middle Kingdoms that is going on in the city, with representatives from Florin and Bastion in attendance as well. These three kingdoms represent the majority of the human population. There are representatives from Gilder, but as we mentioned before in videos months ago, the former established old kingdom of Gilder has fallen into disrepair and somewhat disrespect, as there has not been an established leader introduced from the city of Potiphar, which is one of the primary cities of Gilder Frontier. All right, so now we come to an interesting story. In the village of Haven, a hero has arisen that recalls the golden ages of the past. A champion known as Stormcrow, what appears to be a Nixian Eldrin, who claims he actually lays claim to the ancient term elf. Everyone else scoffs at him, but he insists on calling himself an elf. Has just liberated a region of southern Inandara from a very foul beast, destroying something known as the Proteus Prime in an act of very nearly self-sacrifice. It's an amazing story, and that can be followed in our Patreon group, which play on Sunday. So if you are interested in learning more about that particular campaign, recommendation is if you join our Patreon over at patreon.com/Nikos, you at any level you can become a participant in the campaign, therefore on Sundays. So that group is let's just say there's more to the story than meets the eye, because there seems to be a female clouded leopard of some notable appearance that may or may not have been involved in that action. But that story, pardon the pun, is cloudy. There's not a lot of detail about that. For more, you have to check up with the Sunday group. Now, the rest of the continent, really, I could go into each individual kingdom, but the rest of the continent has sort of been loosed from the narrative simply because there have not been any players in the areas of Chandra, Concordia, Cryopathia to the north, Bergeron, Bylon, and such like to the east and south. But something very interesting is going off the coast of Selk. Now, Selk isn't even on the map yet. It's a town, not a city, but it is one of the southernmost points on the continent of Yarlum, directly south of the Silver Blades. Oh, I didn't need to mention the tragedy, the huge tragedy of this iteration has been visited on the Silver Blades Mountain as it appears the vessel currently known as the Scroll Ship, a believed outworlder or other spacecraft, if you will. That's not a local term, but has devastatingly crashed into the Silver Blades, destroying all of the cities along the mountainous ridge, basically decimating the Primus elf population, and even reaching at the northernmost point its final terminus of the mountain of Valara. So the entire region, the entire mountain seems to have been scorched and marred and destroyed. No one has made any eyewitness reports of the area, but the devastation has been reflected in the number of refugees and individual eldren who are basically just escaping the terror and the horror of their burning civilizations. More information on that will be available in later episodes, as I'm sure one of the Adventuring with More may actually attend to those devastating news stories. Hey, thanks, Gabby. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions about the world of Nikos, feel free to ask. We're kind of going over the current state of affairs to get us back up to speed. This is Newsday. This is the day when we talk about exciting news about the world of Nikos and what's going on in both the in-game world and in the meta world. So I'm way more quiet than the music. That's good to know. I will go and fix that. Give me a moment. I was trying to use the music for fill, but I'm talking most of the time, so there's not a lot of need for the fill. So I apologize for the music being in the way. So the star on the crown of the stories this week is the fact that for the first time in 9 iterations, so in the first time in 50 actual years, I've been playing role-playing games for 50 years, and for the first time ever, one of my adventuring groups has determined that they will sail off into the black. The oceans are considered to be black water because up until the last 300 years in game time, the stars were not visible. And although they've been there for 300 years, there hasn't been a lot of specific study of them. And so the idea of astral navigation or star navigation, this will be the first time they're going. Okay, I'll be back after the ads. Let me know when they're over. So when you're back, let me know and I'll continue. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hakawa. Glad to have you with us. Yay! Need to get my. Just a second. I got something. I have something for this. I was planning on it, but I didn't anticipate it. Ah. Congratulations, welcome Hakua. Welcome to joining us. I will be sending you after the episode today the link to come to become part of the Discord as well. If you are already part of the Discord, great. If not, we will definitely get you membership to that. Having said that, we are now to the final story. I'm excited to say that the Saturday group, which is calling itself the Voyage of the Arkan Eye, which is the name of their vessel, has departed from Selk, specifically to head to points beyond the boundaries. There. Thank you, Hakawa. Now I know who you are. That's good. Hey, welcome. And I knew you'd probably come along for the lore if you could. So, you'll have to go back and watch this one in recording because I'm down to the last few minutes, and I hope you've been watching. But the point here is that the Arkan Eye, a sloop out of Selk with a Whisper Mist registry, has departed. They haven't yet quite gotten out of sight of land. They're 2 days out on a southward course, and they have arrived at the wreckage of an Eldrin sea ship. They are familiar with this because one of their crewmen is a Maruk who has dread reckoning, the ability to navigate by the wrecks of the sea. They're familiar with where every ship fundamentally has gone down over history, and that's how they basically navigate, because this is a legacy of almost 10,000 years of naval history. They've never navigated beyond the edge of land site, but they decided to do some exploration. So that's what's going on there. That's kind of like the hugest news. But in a quick recap of our major news stories, the Skiff-born adventuring group from Tuesdays at Board Game Paradise are currently grounded. Their airship is grounded due to bad weather in the along the edge of the Grithwall Mountains. They are on their way northward towards the city of Nexus, which is a newly established city and is not yet marked or identified on this map. The Strangers in a Strange Land group are currently in the city of Elsadar in Eldrasar, on their way back to their home, their home base, if you will, of the city of Potiphar. And while they are here, they are interacting with the local population and getting their sea legs, so to speak, on the regional politics, being drawn somewhat into the conclave of the Middle Kingdoms that I mentioned earlier. The Heralds of the Change are rejoicing with the completion of the task of destroying the Proteus Prime in the area near Haven on the edge of the Inundaran Forest, which puts them in pretty close proximity to our Strangers in a Strange Land group. So those two groups have been flirting with interacting again for a little while. And then finally, the last point of concert is the group I mentioned south of the continent. Now, those are the current campaigns that are being reported. We do have a couple of professional campaigns on different days of the week. But if you are a follower of the channel and you're aware of what's going on. The news is about to get much more deep as each of these groups will start to be aware of these reports and will be providing you with information about it. Until next time, thank you for being a member of the show, and we will see you next time. Talk to you later.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame. Our strength in numbers is a roll of the dice. Played 1,000 hours and I think that I died just once. Or maybe twice. I live in dungeons. Dungeons. Always here. I live in dungeons. Dungeons. Like a kid. I'm well respected as a lord of the blade. Got a dozen guildmates, always up for a late night raid. Though I wouldn't know them by a name or a face. We fight like brothers.